Breaking news! A bold move is brewing inside the Baltimore Ravens camp, and it's all centered around a player that, just a few months ago, many fans had already written off. But now, he's quietly becoming one of the most talked about names in the entire facility. Coaches are excited, teammates are noticing, and insiders are hinting that something big could be on the horizon. We're not talking about a household name here. This is a player who could flip the script in 2025 and change the dynamic of the Ravens offense in ways most people aren't even thinking about yet. But before we move on, make sure you hit that like button if you're a true Ravens fan. It's always amazing to see fans of all ages supporting this team. And if you feel like it, comment, "Go Ravens," to show that purple pride. Let's get straight into it. Devontez Walker. That's the name that's catching fire among Ravens insiders. And not just for his raw speed or physical profile, but because of what he's starting to represent, a fourth-round pick who might just rewrite his narrative in Baltimore. Walker, selected 113th overall in the 2024 NFL Draft out of North Carolina, is starting to shift expectations. Not long ago, this was a player that barely made a ripple during his rookie campaign, logging just a single reception. But what a reception it was, 21 yards, straight into the end zone. One catch, one touchdown, a whisper of what could be. But here's where things start to get compelling. At 6 feet 1 inch and 198 pounds, Devontez Walker isn't physically imposing by NFL standards, and that's precisely why his rise is so intriguing. He's not built to bully defenders, and in a league full of high-contact, press-happy secondaries, that would typically spell trouble. But his weapon is his speed, blazing speed. A 4.36 in the 40-yard dash puts him among the fastest in the league, and with that speed comes separation, deep ball potential, and the ability to stretch defenses in ways Baltimore has craved for years. His college resume was already hinting at what might come. After starting at Kent State and racking up nearly 1,000 yards with 11 touchdowns in a breakout season, Walker transferred to UNC. Despite the NCAA's decision to bench him for the first 4 games, one of those classic head-scratching rulings, he still managed nearly 700 yards, averaging 17 yards per catch in just 8 games. When you're putting up numbers like that in limited time, you're not just fast, you're productive, and the early signs in 2025 are validating the hype. ESPN named Devontez Walker the Ravens' biggest offseason surprise. That's not a small feat, considering the talent Baltimore's roster is stacked with. According to insider Jamison Hensley, Walker was Baltimore's most consistent wide receiver throughout spring practices. He wasn't just making plays, he was making statement plays. An over-the-shoulder 20-yard grab on day 1. An acrobatic sideline catch over TJ Tampa on day 2. These aren't fluke moments. They're flashes of a player ready to make the leap. As it stands now, he's the front-runner to be the team's number 4 wide receiver behind Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, and DeAndre Hopkins. But that's just the floor. His potential role as WR4 is already an elevation from last year's status, but what's even more fascinating is the long-term projection. With DeAndre Hopkins on a 1-year deal, the Ravens are quietly preparing for life after D-Hop. Could 2025 be the transition year that grooms Walker for the WR3 role in 2026? The comparisons between the two aren't far-fetched either. Both stand at 6 feet 1 inch. Walker has the edge in weight and speed, and neither player has had trouble with drops. In fact, Walker's collegiate drop rate was impressively low, and in the NFL, it's a pristine 0%. Hopkins, a future Hall of Famer, owns a drop rate of just 3.6%, which is elite. Of course, Hopkins hit the ground running with 802 yards in his rookie season, while Walker had just 21. But the Ravens aren't asking for a replica of D-Hop. They're looking for consistency, growth, and reliability. And let's be honest, plenty of legends started slow. Chris Carter, Steve Smith Sr., Reggie Wayne, all had underwhelming rookie years before exploding into superstardom. Walker might not hit 1,000 yards this year, but if he can notch 20 to 30 catches, rack up 300 to 500 yards, and add a few touchdowns, that's exactly the progression Baltimore is banking on. It would set the stage for a third-year breakout and give the Ravens a homegrown star to slide into a top 3 role. And let's not forget the biggest variable of all, how Walker responds when the real bullets fly. There's a world of difference between looking good in practice and executing under the lights of M/T Bank Stadium with playoff implications on the line. Training camp and preseason will be his true testing ground. He'll have to face not just teammates, but aggressive, scheming defenders from other rosters who are gunning for a spot on their own teams. This is where we find out whether Walker's progress is more than just a good camp story. Still, what separates Walker from your typical camp standout is the momentum of belief coming from inside the building. Coaches are seeing his route running improve, scouts are buzzing about his polish, and most importantly, he's stacking days. That's the hallmark of a guy who's not just flashing, but building towards something bigger. The fact that Baltimore is even contemplating a WR4 slot for a player who only played 20 snaps in his rookie year speaks volumes. They believe in the trajectory, and as Ravens fans know, when this front office starts to believe in a player, it usually means something, and that trajectory could mean a lot for the offense in 2025. With Lamar Jackson under center, surrounded by explosive weapons like Zay Flowers and a healthy Rashad Bateman, the addition of a reliable deep threat like Walker adds another layer of stress for defenses. Suddenly, you can't roll your coverage over to Zay every time. You can't sit on intermediate routes when Walker can burn you over the top. That creates spacing, which opens up the middle for Mark Andrews. It makes the run game more effective. It forces defensive coordinators to pick their poison. It also might mean DeAndre Hopkins doesn't need to be run into the ground. With Walker easing some of the load and stepping into more reps as the season progresses, Baltimore can manage Hopkins' snaps and preserve him for the postseason. It's a smart long-term play, and the Ravens are nothing if not strategic. They've played this game before, developing talent in the shadows while veterans hold the spotlight. And when the time is right, the shift happens. Remember how we watched Zay Flowers start slow and then surge? The blueprint is there. Still, it's not just about the physical tools or the strategic value. What's really turning heads is Walker's mindset. By all accounts, he's a grinder, a humble, hard-working player who hasn't let last year's struggles define him. That's the kind of mentality that thrives in Baltimore. The Ravens don't hand anything to you, you earn every snap, every target, and Walker appears to be doing just that. But here's the bigger question for Ravens fans. What does this say about the future of the wide receiver room? For years, this franchise struggled to draft and develop wide receivers. They were often seen as a team that leaned on defense and tight ends, rarely hitting big at wide out. But in the last few drafts, we've seen a philosophical shift. Zay Flowers is blossoming. Rashad Bateman, when healthy, is a legitimate threat. If Walker hits, that's 3 homegrown receivers making noise, backed by a future Hall of Famer in DeAndre Hopkins and an MVP quarterback. That's the kind of offensive firepower Baltimore fans have been waiting for. And let's be real, when was the last time we talked about the Ravens having a true 4-deep wide receiver room with this much potential? You'd probably have to go back decades. That's how significant Walker's emergence could be. He doesn't need to be a Pro Bowler this year. He doesn't even need to start. He just needs to become reliable, to show flashes, to be ready when called upon. If he can give this team 400 yards, 3 or 4 touchdowns, and maintain his perfect drop rate, he's done more than his job. So here's the deal. The hype is real, but the stage is bigger. Walker has the tools. He's shown the flashes. But can he translate it when it matters? Can he step onto the field in week 1, 2, 3, and beyond and prove he belongs? Can he go from training camp darling to consistent in-season contributor? That's the story we're about to find out. And Ravens fans, we want to know what you think. Is Devontez Walker ready for a breakout year in 2025? Or are we putting too much on a player with just one NFL catch to his name? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's hear what the flock really thinks about this hidden gem.